the big man. Calmly knocks down another. Victor Wembanyama, 7 threes.
Maybe not only the greatest prospect in the NBA's history, maybe the greatest prospect in the history of team sports.
One-on-one, turns and faces, trying to get the move. Wembanyama, oh, this kid is good.
He's the most heralded NBA prospect since LeBron James, a bona fide basketball unicorn, a 7'4" phenom poised to redefine the big man role in his singular image, a generational talent ready to take the association by storm. This is the story behind Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama was born January 4, 2004 in Le Chesnay, France, roughly 10 miles west of Paris. The French suburb isn't known for producing NBA superstars, but Wembanyama came into the world practically born to ball, or at the very least, destined for athletic greatness and enviable height. His father Felix was a 6'5" track and field standout, while his mother, 6'3" Elodie, played professional basketball herself before transitioning into coaching. Furthermore, Elodie's father, Wembanyama's grandfather, stood 6'7" and also played high-level basketball in France. And although Wembanyama was given the freedom to choose his own passion and pursuits, as the prodigy himself once put it, in his family, basketball was hard to avoid. And sure enough, the young Wembanyama quickly became enamored with the game, a sport he connected with more deeply than he had soccer and judo. It didn't hurt that from practically day one, Wembanyama towered over everyone else on the court, even when he played with kids multiple years older than him. And it immediately became clear that the kid was special, a remarkable athlete and uniquely well-rounded for his size. He could handle the ball, he could pass, he could shoot. Seemingly, he could do it all and then some. By age 9, he was helping his mother coach kids his own age. Shortly thereafter, Wembanyama's journey to the NBA began in earnest. During an 11U game in Versailles, Wembanyama caught the attention of Michael Allard, a coach with Nanterre, one of France's oldest and suddenly ascendant professional clubs. As it happens, Allard had initially mistaken the towering youngster for the team's assistant coach. Once Wembanyama took the floor, however, Allard realized his mistake and immediately called the technical director for Nanterre's youth program to inform him of this otherworldly prospect he'd just discovered. Before long, Wembanyama moved to Nanterre, where he ate, slept, and breathed basketball at the club's de facto boarding school. There, rather than focus on the facets of the game traditionally deemed most important for big men, Wembanyama was encouraged to be himself, to play the point, to cross guys up, to launch outrageous threes. And that freedom, combined with his own exceptional work ethic and ever-increasing height and wingspan, allowed him to blossom into a prospect as tantalizing as any teenager before him. By age 14, Wembanyama had grown to 6'11" and was starting to generate major buzz across Europe. It was clear to anyone that watched this kid that he was destined for the NBA. That includes longtime NBA veteran and fellow Frenchman Nicolas Batum, who randomly caught a glimpse of a 14-year-old Wembanyama practicing one day and immediately recognized that he was watching a future superstar. And Wembanyama himself was fully aware of his incredible potential. In fact, in anticipation of his NBA future, Wembanyama poured as much attention into his basketball development as he did his English lessons, because, as he put it, basketball people speak English. By age 15, Wembanyama had outgrown Nanterre's junior team and was added to the club's senior roster, joining the squad and making his professional debut at the 2019 Euro Cup. And it wasn't long before his greatness was laid bare for all to see. In 2020-2021, a 16-year-old Wembanyama was named Best Young Player in NLB Pro A, the highest level of professional basketball in France. Squaring off against grown men, some of them with NBA experience, Wembanyama showed off a dazzling level of poise, athleticism, and creativity for a teenager who was now well over 7 feet tall. Suddenly, Wembanyama had become the darling of the basketball world, adored across Europe, generating constant attention from NBA scouts and intriguing stateside fans who couldn't stop hearing about this 7-foot French kid who could shoot like Kevin Durant, attack like Giannis, and defend like Rudy Gobert. And speaking of Gobert, the Frenchman actually contributed to Wembanyama's stock exploding. After all, it was Gobert, the now 3-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year, who couldn't contain a 16-year-old Wembanyama in a 2-on-2 game that later went viral on YouTube. And with his increasing stock came a need for even greater competition. Following his auspicious first full season with Nanterre, Wembanyama signed a deal with Asvel, a French powerhouse that plays in the same domestic league as Nanterre, but was also a member of the EuroLeague, the top league in the world after the NBA. Asvel's director of basketball operations, by the way, is Nicolas Batum. There, despite being limited by injuries, and despite logging light minutes on a team focused more on winning than his individual development, Wembanyama still made a considerable impact, earning Pro A's Best Young Player award for a second straight year. By season's end, it was a foregone conclusion that Wembanyama was going to be the prize of the 2023 NBA draft. At 18 years old, he was already being referred to as a generational talent. Still, he was only scratching the surface, and if Wembanyama was going to realize his immense potential on his own timeline, he needed to go somewhere he could prioritize his development. After opting out of his contract with Asvel, offers came in fast and furious from teams across Europe and Australia, as well as the G League Ignite. Instead though, Wembanyama made the somewhat surprising choice to stay in France, moving to another, less formidable Pro A team, Metropolitans 92. At the time, the club was hardly a powerhouse, but Wembanyama saw in that an opportunity to be the centerpiece of a team that could be built around him and ultimately optimized to facilitate his development. And as it turned out, the plan worked to a T. With the training wheels finally off, Wembanyama went bananas, leading not just his team but the entire league in scoring, rebounds, and blocks while logging a league-high 32 minutes per game. He was, in a word, sensational, showing off an unprecedented combination of interior defense, shooting ability, handle, and athleticism. For his efforts, he was named Pro A's Most Valuable Player, in addition to taking home its Best Defender award and a third straight Best Young Player honor. By that point, Wembanyama had long since cemented himself as the undisputed #1 pick in the 2023 NBA Draft, a fate that was unofficially sealed after his commanding performance months earlier in an exhibition game against G League Ignite, his first game on American soil. In that highly anticipated showdown, with more than 200 NBA scouts and executives in attendance, and another precocious talent sharing the floor in Scoot Henderson, Wembanyama dropped 37 points, including 7 three-pointers, while racking up 5 blocks and 4 rebounds in a jaw-dropping performance. Afterward, LeBron James described him as an alien. Steph Curry called him a 2K creative player with cheat code type vibes. No praise, it seemed, was too lofty for Wembanyama, whom ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski later described as maybe the greatest prospect in the history of team sports. Ultimately, virtually everyone worth listening to agreed that whichever NBA franchise landed him was going to get a transformative talent. As such, while Wembanyama was tearing it up with Metropolitans 92, choruses of "Tank for Wemby" grew louder and louder in certain corners of the NBA world. Even though the NBA recently flattened its draft lottery odds in an attempt to discourage tanking, Wembanyama's franchise-altering potential made it hard for many teams to resist making non-competitive moves to try to boost their chances of landing the #1 pick. All season long, in fact, the question of who would win the right to select Wembanyama was just as salient as the MVP debate and which team would hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy. And when the dust finally settled, the 3 franchises with the best chances of securing the #1 pick were Detroit, Houston, and San Antonio, followed closely by Charlotte and Portland. Ultimately though, the basketball gods decided that Wembanyama was headed for the Alamo City.
The second pick will be made by the Charlotte Hornets. And that means that the #1 pick in the 2023 NBA Draft goes to the San Antonio Spurs.
The San Antonio Spurs walk away with the first overall pick in the 2023 draft. The right to draft a paradigm shifter, a generational talent in Victor Wembanyama.
For his part, Wembanyama seemed genuinely delighted to be headed to the Spurs, a franchise not far removed from an NBA record 22 consecutive playoff appearances, a franchise helmed by the winningest coach in league history in Greg Popovich, and a franchise with a long-standing tradition of exceptional big men, namely David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Still, Wembanyama's excitement paled in comparison to the excitement felt in San Antonio. With his destination confirmed and his NBA career unofficially underway, now comes the hard part for Wembanyama, living up to the hype. A level of hype that arguably exceeds what even LeBron experienced when he went first overall straight out of high school back in 2003. Whether Wembanyama fulfills his destiny as a generational talent or not though, one thing is for certain. This 7'4" unicorn with an 8-foot wingspan is definitely going to be fun to watch.